Good evening and welcome to the Sound Off Show. My name is Linda Kirker. I host the program and I'm so glad that you joined us tonight. I have a guest I think you'll enjoy, but before I introduce him, I just want to say there is so much going on in this country and in this state at this time that it boggles my mind. I try to keep up with what's happening, and I see so many things that run counter to the way I was raised and what I was taught when I was younger. And it breaks my heart in a way because many of the standards and the practices and the laws and just the way that life was lived, it was, it was healthy and it was happy for the most part, and families were strong and schools were great, and it was a wonderful time to grow up when I was blessed to grow up. And I would wish that same opportunity for today's young people, but it isn't happening, and maybe many of you who are watching understand what I'm saying because you had the same joys that I had many years ago, I have to admit. I know you can't tell by the white hair. But I have to laugh, life goes on, and we're blessed to reach the older ages, and we need to do what we can to make the most of those years. So with that, I would like to introduce my guest. He was on the show not too long ago, and I just want to, I forgot your last name. Bob Orleck. At least you have a sense of humor.
I'm glad you remember because I might not have.
Well, we can laugh, right?
Yes, of course.
So welcome to the show. Glad to have you back on, Bob. And why don't you tell the viewers something about who you are and where you come from and a little bit about what your life has been so they have a perspective as we proceed with the show.
Well, what you were just saying a second ago resonated clearly with me because I come from that time. And my dad died when I was in high school, and we were what some might say were poor, but we didn't know that. My mother was at home. She made it. And we never went without a meal. And I grew up in the 50s, and what a wonderful time.
Yes, sir.
I didn't realize how great it was. And hey, doesn't everybody have that kind of an experience? No. And so time went on, and opportunity was not something that would come from government at that time. It would have to come from what you wanted, and
starting with the family.
Right. And so I wasn't a great student in high school, in that I was not well directed, but I wasn't a troublemaker or anything. But when it came time to go to college, I wasn't going to go to college. I had to work. Otherwise, how would I go to college? And so my brother was the one that said to me, why don't you come over and talk to the dean of pharmacy? And I said, well, it doesn't make much sense because I don't have any money that I would be able to pay the tuition. But I went there, and the dean looked at my grades and said, oh my gosh. She said, I think you need to go to night school and that. And I said, well, I can't afford that. So I went to work, and I worked and worked and worked. And then for serendipity, but it was just, and I had no sense going into it. It was really unusual circumstances, but all of a sudden I got a request, of whether I was interested in going to pharmacy school. And I said yes, and the next thing I know, I was in pharmacy school.
Wow.
So I graduated, I was the first 5 year, I grew up in northern Kentucky, and close to Cincinnati, and I was the first 5-year course in pharmacy, and
wow.
I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in pharmacy, and then immediately went into law school. And now I was in the top of my class like Joe Biden, was, but actually I was not, I was a fairly good student in law school, and it was interesting. I got my Juris Doctor degree in law in 1968. We had a graduation party, and I hopped in my 1967 Corvette, went out Route 66, and ended up in Los Angeles, and put my baby on a Matson steamliner, and hopped on a plane and met her again when she arrived on Maui.
Oh my!
And so I lived on Maui. I was my wife, who is now my wife of 52 years,
fantastic,
lived in the area where I lived, but she flew over with my mother, and we ended up being married over there.
Oh, nice!
And we had a really, really great life over there. I was at first I went over there as a pharmacist, and I was managing Kraft's Lahaina drug, and people started saying, "Hey, you ought to get involved with the law." So I took my bar exam, and I actually took a real estate license too, and I got that, and then I took the bar exam, and I took a job with the county attorney's office on Maui, and that encompassed 3 islands, Molokai, Lanai, and Maui.
Wow, you covered the bases.
Yeah, and so after a while, I took a job with the county attorney, like I said, the county attorney's office, and I did prosecutorial work as well as civil work. And the biggest thing that happened, we did a lot of things. It was that I handled a civil aeronautics board case where Hawaiian Airlines wanted to discontinue service to Hanamaui. And me and another lawyer went up against a lot of lawyers, and we did okay.
Good.
And I ended up, my last official act was to go to Washington, D.C., and I argued the case that Hawaiian Airlines appealed to the Civil Aeronautics Board in Washington, D.C.
Good for you.
One of the reasons that I came to Vermont was because our police chief, who lived next door to us, he had Vermont Life magazines, and when he'd go away, we'd take care of his house. He said, "Hey, look at the magazines, if you want," because it caught our eye. Mm-hmm. So we fell in love with Vermont through Vermont
From
Life.
Hawaii.
From Hawaii. And when we started having children, we had our daughter there. Daughter Dory was born there. We started thinking we should be a little closer to home, so we decided to come back. Well, we ended up here in Vermont. So I took the bar exam in Vermont and passed it, and I became an assistant attorney general with the Department of Social Welfare. And shortly thereafter, I moved over to corrections, and then when Alan Cook moved on, I became the chief attorney in corrections, and then went to mental health and became the head attorney in mental health.
Oh, my goodness.
And then Jerry Diamond, who was the attorney general, appointed me the head of all human services as attorneys. And so I did that. In the meantime, I had opened a pharmacy in Randolph where I was living, and I hired a pharmacist since it was kind of a curse to have a couple of professions, But I hired him, and it was working really well. We captured most of the business down there because, we were being fair to people, and people really
appreciate that.
They really were warmed up. They really warmed up to us. But he decided to move on, and I couldn't get anybody to replace him right away. So I took vacation and took a leave of absence, and then I kept working. And I said, I don't really mind this too much, And I knew I was coming to the point where I needed to move on to something else, and I was thinking private practice. But when you got a conscience, it's really hard to work as a lawyer. I hate to say that to all you lawyers that are out there, but sometimes you do things just for money, and that's not something that I can do. So I decided to operate the pharmacy, and I did that for quite a while, sold it, went to work for corporations, and then, it just progressed until I retired about 10 years ago. But when we not only the Vermont Life magazine when I came to Vermont, but there was also, something about Vermont. It was pretty conservative. It was Republican.
At that time.
It was beautiful. I mean, it was.
We need to get back to that.
Yeah, I know we do. It was kind of like, hey, next to heaven, to be in Vermont. And so.
Oh, yeah.
So we came to Vermont, and then we saw it progressively decline. And I can tell you, I've been a Republican. I was born a Republican, but my dad was a union organizer. He was a Democrat.
Is that right?
And yet, back in the 50s, and yet my dad and I agreed on the basic issues. These are not my father's or your father's Democrats. These are aliens who are trying to control your life, and they need to be removed from office. We need to do something this November, because this is probably the most important election that I've ever seen in my life. And
I would agree. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and so things just progressively have gone progressively. That's a good term for it.
Yeah, progressive.
Progressively gone downhill. And, and that's really been sad, and especially since Vermont is such a fabulous place to live. But you know what makes me saddest of all?
No, not yet.
About politics?
What?
Phil Scott. A Republican governor, who has done things that I was watching the debate between him and Lieutenant Governor Zuckerman. And one of the questions was on the WCA.
Well, he's not lieutenant governor yet.
No, he was lieutenant governor.
Oh, he was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was lieutenant governor 2 terms, and he's running against Scott for governor.
Yeah.
And the question that was propounded to him by the WCAX was, here you are, you've had 2 terms, and you're a progressive, and you're in a very liberal state that's controlled by liberal politics. How come you're 30 points behind Phil Scott?
Well, he's not a progressive.
Zuckerman?
Oh, I see what, yeah, okay.
They were asking Zuckerman that.
Okay.
Why are you 30 points behind Phil Scott? And they gave their reasons, but I tell you, I think I know the reasons, because, the left really understands that they have a friend in Phil Scott. And let me just point to a couple of things that made me think that way. Phil Scott has done some things that I think are pretty bad, and he he knows that we don't want the radical leftists like I think Zuckerman is, and so he keeps his base. No matter, he can lean a little bit left, and it makes a little bit of sense because Vermont is primarily a liberal state. Yes,
70% in the legislature.
If he relies just upon Republicans, he's going to lose. So, but he went a little too far, because I know there's a lot of people really, really upset. I mean, he signed the bill that allows for unrestricted abortions up to seconds before delivery, and you just think about the wonders of a child about ready to be born, that he signed a bill that allowed that child to be ripped apart in the womb. And that really bothered me a lot. That was key. That was a key one for me.
It's a tough one, yeah.
And then just recently, he allowed the pot bill, the recreational sale. Now, I was a prosecutor, and I dealt with a lot of people who I prosecuted people for marijuana, but marijuana then was 1% to 2% tetrahydrocannabinol, not the psychotic-causing drug. And this bill allows for 60%, up to 60% THC. So that was really a bad thing. And here's the part that I say, Phil Scott is the biggest disappointment of all, because those liberal legislators and any legislator could have voted against this bill, but it wouldn't have made a difference, because there were enough votes that their vote didn't count. But when the legislature went home this last session, they went home without scheduling a veto override session. And Phil Scott was a one-man legislature. He could, if he vetoed that bill, they wouldn't have overrode his veto.
You don't think so?
And well, they couldn't. They didn't have a veto override session, so it would have died for this session and would have gone. It would have gone. Had to go into a new biennium, and they would have to start over again. And not only that, he allowed the police reform bill to go into effect, and even his own commissioner of public safety says, that. He has really concerns about, policing for people. And so here we got a Republican governor does that. But here's the really kicker for a lot of people. I think we have a pretty great president. And, and he's done a lot of great things. And yes, I know love him or you hate him, but the haters don't seem to ever look at what he's done. They only look at hating him. And why didn't our governor just keep his mouth shut instead of saying he never voted for Trump and he's not going to vote for him again?
I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I can understand the desire, although I couldn't do it. But if I were in Phil Scott's place, I just couldn't do it because I stand too much on principle, what is right or wrong in my belief system. And I would just take my shots. If I lost, I lost.
That's right.
But
why didn't he just say, look, the voting booth is sacred. It's my private vote, and let it be done at that.
I know.
But here he tacks the top.
Who was he pleasing by saying that?
Well, guess what? We know, and look at the damage he's done to down ticket, because who's the top of the ticket? President Trump. And he's got coattails, and I think we're going to be surprised.
I'm hoping.
If people are in their right mind.
If people look at the rebuilding of our military, our ships and our planes and tanks and guns and all the things that are needed to keep this country safe, to defend this nation. What's more important? And
look at the progress that he's made for peace in the Middle East.
Oh, amazing.
He's gotten rid of ISIS. He has overseen the best economy ever.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I couldn't believe how the economy just roared until China
not just
got
for
in.
people in general, but even blacks, Hispanics, and so forth. They have
are voting for him.
They have the lowest. Well, I hope so. They have the lowest unemployment in history under him.
Yeah.
He's the fairest guy. He's pro-life. He's
building a wall.
He's protecting our borders. Why wouldn't we want to protect our borders?
You tell me. I can't understand it.
I can't either.
This is you don't, as they say, Bob, you don't have a country without borders. Otherwise, it's just a mishmash, part of a big piece of land.
Yeah.
Okay? Contiguous land with the Canada and Mexico. We have an individual separate nation that was formed on certain principles on behalf of the people of this nation. Freedom of opportunity and rights. And there are people out there creating laws and uproars and all kinds of things that are trying to destroy the founding structure of the United States of America. And they're not teaching it, as I understand it. The children are not learning U.S. civics in school. And you know, and I know, and the viewers I'm sure know, that the young people of today are the future leaders and protectors of their rights.
And Linda, this COVID thing has brought about in education, in some ways bad things, and in some ways good things, because it's turned people to thinking of alternatives to the public education system, which is an utter failure. The union led, what is going on into the public schools and what they're not teaching in history and so forth is absolutely tragic and almost criminal. It is criminal.
Go
ahead. And yet a lot of people are homeschooling. A lot of people, looking at charter schools, religious schools, and the recent Supreme Court case that says you can't, if they're going to give grants, they can't discriminate against a person choosing a religious
Private
school just
school.
because it's a religious school, which is going to open some doors here in Vermont. So, that's really good. But, if in this election, if
Please, Lord.
it'll turn that all around again. We will not. They will be the enemy of the state. Will be people who homeschool and
I just hope that people realize how much is at stake. Joe Biden, sadly, is not equipped, mentally or otherwise, to run this nation in a way that the nation would become even stronger, and that means that other people would be running the nation behind the screen.
It won't be long that the most radical senator in the country, Kamala Harris, will be the president. But just yesterday, Joe Biden said, he hopes people support him in his run for Senate. I mean,
it's sad.
Honestly, that was just yesterday again. He's done that before. Oh, it is sad.
He doesn't have it together. But I have a question.
But before let me just get off of Phil Scott here. The one thing, he was a gatekeeper. Gatekeepers let people in and out. He could have stopped this terrible marijuana. This bill is going to kill people. This 60%. I'm a pharmacist. I know quite a bit about it. With COVID, he preached how good he was with following the science. Well, the science has been telling him for years that this pot bills are horrible. There were doctors that just put a full-page ads out in the Rutland Herald, signed by lots of doctors. He totally ignored it.
Oh, the medical community, the legal community, the schools, none of them want this.
None of it. And he totally ignored it. So, what is his guiding principles? This makes me sick every time I hear him. Excuse me, Governor, it makes me sick when you say that you protect the most vulnerable. That's one of your main principles. What's more vulnerable than a baby that's just about to be born? What's more vulnerable than a child with a developing brain that you're now creating an atmosphere that, hey, it's just pot, and you really think that people aren't going to die from this? People are going to die from this, and I don't know how you're going to live with that, but maybe you won't.
On another topic,
maybe it won't bother you, but it should.
I have a question on another topic. Can you tell me? We had, I think it was in 2005. We had 105,000 K through 12 students in our schools. We have lost, we're down to around 70,000, okay? So we've lost about 35,000 students over that time period.
Yeah.
So why are we spending more money than ever when we have so many fewer students? Now, what they've done in order to make up for the loss of 35,000 K through 12 students, they now have pre-K in the schools, okay? Right. So how did they accomplish that? Well, we had pre-K private enterprises, people around, even in Franklin County, there were a number of people who had private daycares for the little children. What did the state do? They created so many regulations on those people. They made it expensive and difficult for them to stay in business so that they could march these 3- and 4-year-olds into the school system to make up for the loss of some of the 30,000 or 35,000 students that we had lost, to keep the money pouring into the school system. All right? That's the union. I'm not a big union fan, okay? I never worked in a business where there was a union. I wouldn't do it. But the Supreme Court, on another note, has voted that even if you work in a unionized business, you no longer have to become a member of the union. Now, that might be a tough position for somebody to try to pull off if you're working in a unionized business, but you don't want to become part of the union, a union member, they could fire you, they could make life difficult for you, who knows? But there are so many things going on. The children need to be taught civics about the founding of this nation. And let's get on to another hot topic, and that is the global warming scenario, all right? Global Warming Solutions Act. Could you explain to me, Vermont is a state that has summer, spring, winter, and fall. The climate changes. It's a natural thing. Now, Vermont also has numerous forests that, if any carbon should be generated from cars driving or trucks driving on the road, let's say, that is generally absorbed by the forests. We have one of the very lowest carbon footprints, if you will, in the nation. And yet, our Democrat legislature, 70% in the House and the Senate, we Republicans don't have a voice anymore in our legislature, but they are all about control. You're not going to be able to drive your car. You're not going to be able to sell your home if you haven't changed things to their satisfaction before you sell it.
Well, before I do want to comment on that, but on the education thing, I can tell you, I'm at the point, and part of what I was speaking to the governor about is that, we'll probably, I'm fed up with what he's done. And, I'm really considering seriously leaving the state. Now,
you're not the only one. There are a lot of people talking.
There's other reasons that I would be leaving the state too, but one of which is it's just me and my wife up here and our kids, because of the poor economics that were brought about by the Democrats and the lack of good jobs here. My son had to leave and my daughter had to leave, and so therefore my son lives in Washington State with my grandchild, and my daughter lives in North Carolina with 3 of my grandchildren. So, they're not even close to us. So, that's another reason that, in a way, I wanted to live out my life here in Vermont. But I'm thinking, it's becoming harder and harder. The winters are hard. So that's one thing. And as far as the 30,000, I'll just make a comment. If they wouldn't be, I did a study on this, numbers. And if we didn't have the abortion that we had over those years, that would, the kids and the kids that had kids
in this state,
it would have amounted to 30 to 35,000.
Oh, it's more than that.
No, but in school today, the schools, they would have amounted to those 30 to 35,000. But anyway, but on the GWSA, of course, the governor vetoed that. He couldn't carry the day on that because they overrode his veto. But that particular bill, it's probably unconstitutional because it delegated
23-member board?
Yeah, to a board that's going to make major decisions on this.
And who are these people? They're not legislators?
And the legislator and the liberal legislators, the leftists, have shunted off their responsibility.
The same thing with health care.
Yeah.
There's a health care board, and then there's another board and they have big budgets that we're paying for. Let health care be what it is. Let it be private enterprise. Get government out of it.
But the point on the GWSA, I don't even have to get to the point of determining, saying anything about climate change. There's climate change. I don't know what. Can I say that climate change is caused by certain things that humans do?
Excuse me, Bob. We have a caller.
Oh.
Caller, welcome to the program. Sorry about that, Bob.
Okay, no.
What's on your mind?
Well, I'm watching your show here on the computer,
Yes.
and I can't agree with you folks more, and especially your guest. This marijuana thing that this governor allowed to happen, the state police weren't even ready for this, and this is selling them out. And also getting back to, you mentioned the fact how Vermont was solid Democrat by 70%. I wish to notify the Franklin County voters of this county. This election, you will not ever realize how important this election is. This election is about overturning this country. And when I say overturning this country, it's a known fact that if these Democrats take over the Senate and the House, they're going to tear it around, and they're going to instantly pack the Supreme Court with extra jurors. They're also...
Whoops.
Awesome.
Well, your show here on the computer.
We lost you.
Yeah, Linda?
Yes.
Yeah. And they're going to pack the Supreme Court and make it favorable to them. And they'll also end up installing 4 new Democratic senators from Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. Guaranteed.
Well, they want to make Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico each a state so that they can have, because the people who live in those areas are primarily Democrat.
Exactly, and they'll want to do away with the filibuster rule. And thanks to Harry Reid, we told them that it would come back to bite them, and it is. And they want to end up having they want to change that filibuster rule. They'll be just like Vermont. They'll do anything they want from Washington, D.C. Anybody that has guns, 4-wheelers, jet skis, boats, RVs, if you enjoy them, you better do your homework when you come to vote this year, because this is critically important. I've read 8 books on this election, so people need to do their homework, because a conservative will never step foot in Washington again, and you won't even have to bother to go vote, because it's going to be a one-party rule.
Socialist.
Yes, and I agree a great deal with what the caller has said.
You're right, Norm.
But there's one other issue as we're facing now with the confirmation hearings that are going on with Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah.
Is that if you just stop and think about it, I mean, there are a number of cases that have come before the Supreme Court, and that have challenged our freedom of expression, gun rights, and so forth, and they've been 5-4. We are one vote away from losing a lot of our freedoms, and this is a very critical vote.
Absolutely.
That's Ted Cruz's book, One Vote Away from Losing Our Freedom. He wrote a fantastic book, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some...
And there's a great deal of there's validity in that, and people ought to be very fearful of that, because we are so close to losing our freedoms. I mean, it's
I agree.
if you're not open to seeing what's going on, where people are being denied even their freedom of expression in many very ways in the colleges
Religion.
religion, Christians, and yet they stand by and let people who want to destroy this country, rioters, burn buildings, tear down statues, and yet people can't gather in the churches and sing. Some in California, they're not allowed to sing, I think, is what Gavin Newsom said, because they might spray out the...
Oh, boy.
Well, you mentioned that, and it's good that you mentioned that, because I was going over some of the things that our current president has changed, and he changed the Johnson rule where he silenced the churches, and he did that in 2017 or so. That's one of the main things he did. Our churches now can speak their piece.
Well, they can. No, I'm talking about the fact that because of this COVID thing, the governors are, the totalitarian governors are keeping, they're letting people without social distancing, mask or anything, riot in the streets. So that's okay. Those aren't super spreader situations.
Exactly.
But if you gather in a church, you're going to be a super spreader.
That's because...
Right, even just because you sing praises to the Lord.
Yeah, they're trying to, do away with Christianity, which is another fundamental of the founding of this nation.
When you look at Marxism, that's one. I mean, all the positives. Family unit. The nuclear family. Chaos is what they need, and that includes belief systems like Christianity and so forth. You got to get rid of them, and that's where these people are. That's where these people are heading, because they are Marxists. This is. Can we move on? Because I want to talk. We should talk.
Norm, when you, if you,
very good. I'm listening to your show. Very good show tonight, and I agree with your guest 100%, especially on the marijuana thing, and especially Governor Scott not taking a stand.
Well,
okay, good night.
Thank you, Norm.
Yeah, well, just to make one last comment about I have decided not to vote for the governor this year, and you know why? And I know people are going to say, but that's a vote for Zuckerman. Well, you know what? There's this thing about the lesser of two evils, voting for the lesser of two evils. Maybe Scott is the lesser of two evils, but at the end of the day, if I vote for him, I have voted for evil. And we've got evil at the end of the day, and you know what? I'm just not going to do it. My conscience will not allow me
I'm
to
torn.
do that.
I'm torn on this because
easily torn. So am I. Actually, that was hard for me to say that. I have I supported the governor for the last 2 terms, even though I had to sometimes hold my nose when I voted. But so anyway.
Yeah.
But the threat of socialism is really upon us, and if we're not careful, we're going to survive the COVID thing, the deaths, and I question the counting of the number of the deaths that are involved. The CDC said only 6% of those people died solely of COVID, and the others had 2.6 comorbidities. But the one thing we won't survive. The 100 million people who have died under socialism over the last 100 years. We will not survive that, and we are heading to that at breakneck speed. And that's what I will never vote for. I'm sorry, I'm saying I wouldn't vote for the governor. He's a Republican, but I will never vote for a Democrat. That party is the party that's taking us down a socialistic path, and we've got to wake up, and we've got to say no to them. Get them out of the state.
Well, it's redistribution of wealth. It's a more powerful, centralized government under socialism, including everything from Medicare for all, free tuition for every college student, the Green New Deal, open borders, radical tax hikes, and 100% renewable energy. That will be a disaster. A disaster. All of it. Medicare for all.
You'll never get to 100% renewable energy because, in Vermont, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow,
But it's about control of the people. And that's socialism. Under socialism, the government controls your life, your money, whatever it is, your home.
And this is what distinguishes, I am a Republican and I will be a Republican because, Republican, if you look at the history of what the Republican Party is and you look at their platform compared to the Democratic platform, you see the Republicans care about people. Democrats care about control, and it's a religion to them. It is a religion to them. Our religion is our faith in Christ, and
hard work, ethic, personal responsibility.
But that defines the difference. They will never give up because it's such a religion to them. Somebody says I renounce my faith in Christ, they could take my life, and they're saying the same thing. Renounce our faith in socialism, you can take their life. They are that dedicated to their cause.
Well,
where we are not dedicated to the cause of government.
We're too used to the freedoms and the rights and the opportunities, and we think they're going to go on forever. But there are big forces out there with big money, and there are globalists who want to bring this country right down, and us along with it, and they're taking it step by step by step.
And if you see the way other nations have failed, we are not immune from that, and we are at stages. There are progressions from the great times that we had in the 50s to, people becoming more, self-sufficient or prosperous, and then they become more decadent, and then all of a sudden, boom, down, and we're headed, I don't know the exact progression, but that's you get the idea, and that's where we're heading. Unless people turn around, get their lives right in their family. The most important thing is the family unit.
Absolutely. And after that, your religion and your schools.
No, your faith in Christ should come first. And then I believe that's the first thing. But, with that, everything else will come, and will come properly. It gives you a joy of living. And,
well, from what you see and I see and Norm sees going on in this country,
yeah,
we the people have to wake up and stand up and fight back. Get into your schools. The schools didn't even want the kids doing their schoolwork from home during the COVID crisis because the parents could see what they were teaching them on the computer. What does that tell you?
So how are they dealing with that?
I don't know.
I mean, how are they?
The kids are going back to school pretty much.
Well, I don't know.
A couple of days a week.
I was talking to my son, and he lives in Washington, and they're not. And, his little daughter hasn't seen a friend since March.
Hey, I don't see my friends either,
And it's really sad because you need that social interaction.
But this is.
And she's a sweet.
I'm sure she is.
She's absolutely sweet.
Yeah, well, you're not biased or anything.
All my grandkids are sweet.
Of course they are.
I just wish I'd see them more.
Well, this is a very, very trying time in this country. And we either fight to keep the founding principles, the gifts that we were given when this country was created by people who had come from a type of lifestyle where they weren't feeling free and we have this wonderful gift here and we're not standing up for it. We're not fighting back. And if we continue to elect these same people who are doing the damage, with the exception of the president, who I think has done a phenomenal job. You may not like his tweets, although I haven't heard much about tweets lately. But, he may not be your favorite character in the world, but boy, he's a heck of a hard worker. He loves this country. He loves the people of this country, and he's done so many good things.
And that's part of the reason they hate him, because he is for the people, and they want the people to be under the control that they have.
Of the government.
They want to be under the control of the government.
Absolutely. Yeah. So he's he's the opposite on the scale of what the socialist / communist philosophy is trying to do to this country.
And if you look at just look at the wonders of our Constitution, and it's amazing. But you know what? It's not a very strong document. I know you're going to think.
Not unless the
why?
people.
Because it doesn't control. And John.
That's the whole idea.
I know. And John Adams said that it is only suitable for moral and righteous people. Yes, because otherwise they're going to take, and they're taking advantage of it in the streets. They're destroying our country.
Boy.
And yet, under the guise of freedom, they got a right. They got buildings burning in the background in the media saying, "Oh, this is a peaceful protest," protected by the Constitution. This is absolutely ridiculous.
How they're getting away with that in these Democrat-run states, I don't know.
What it boils down to is it's not just elections. Elections are not going to win it. Government cannot fix it. Politicians cannot fix it. We cannot, because we're involved in it. People have to get their lives right, and they have to. They've lost their way. They don't have a strong foundation. They're not building their lives on a strong foundation. Their children are not being taught, these things that we're obligated under the Bible teaches. You got to teach your kids what's right,
Well,
and present this to them, and until people come back to that, we're toast.
as we've said,
We're toast.
the main foundation of a country starts with the American family.
Yep.
Good parenting, teaching children work ethic, personal responsibility, accountability for their actions, empower them so that when they get to school, they're ready to learn. But then we have to also make sure that the unions and others are not controlling our schools.
We were talking about local politics quite a bit here, but do you know what Peter Welsh has said in a debate? He wants to do away with the Electoral College.
Oh,
That should be a disqualification for him being reelected in Vermont.
I agree.
That would totally disenfranchise Vermonters. Our 600,000, each one of our 600, those, we don't have 600,000 voters, but, each vote in Vermont would be equivalent to each vote in New York or California. We would be so diluted that it wouldn't matter whether we go vote. And yet Peter Welsh said that, and you know what, that is part of the deal too, where if they can see to it that a president is elected by popular vote, New York, California,
we won't have a voice.
we want to, well, they will control, because who controls those cities?
The Democrats.
The cities are falling apart. The murder rate's going crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Black on black death.
People living on the
BLM
streets.
doesn't care about black lives. They just care about destroying our society.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an excuse for that. This is another excuse. If they truly cared about black lives, it would be all Black Lives Matter, including police officers, the mayors of those cities. They're black as well. And,
Yes.
And it's so simple. All you have to do is abide by the Declaration of Independence, which said, that all men are created equal. They are endowed with unalienable rights.
I was going to go there.
All men.
Yes,
All
people.
All people.
I was going to go there too, because slavery ended how many, 100 years or more ago, okay? So we're a great enough country that we got rid of that, all right? So if you happen to be a person of dark skin, what is it that you don't have under our Constitution?
Yeah.
You have the same rights that you and I have, okay? You have the right to work hard. You have the right to be successful. You have the right to get an education. You have the right to raise a family. You have a right to run for politics. You have equal rights. But what is all this about?
Well, that becomes those things. It doesn't work, the black and white thing doesn't work anymore for them. So now we have to just say, hey, because of those things, those are racist type of thoughts. And whites, strong families, working hard and so forth. Those are racist ideas in their minds. That's what they're selling people.
No, yeah, but that's not true.
Oh, no, it's not true. It's not true at all. It's all a lie. It's all a bunch of lies.
It's all made up to foster their cause.
It is.
Okay? They want the people to be angry so that the country has a lot of chaos, instead of saying, you have the right to go to school just like your neighbor's children. All right.
But you said there isn't slavery anymore in this country, and I tend to disagree with that, because the slavery that I see, the Republican Party was the party that eliminated slavery.
That's right.
The Democrats are.
They all voted against freeing the slaves.
We had Ku Klux Klan senators that Joe Biden just. Strom Thurmond and a number of them that he considered them his best of friends, and just idolized them. But they are the ones that have made everyone believe that they were the ones that freed the slaves, that they were the ones that.
No, Abraham Lincoln and the Republicans at
the
that
Civil
time.
Rights Act of 1964 was opposed by the Democratic Party. It was strictly the Republicans.
Yeah.
But you know what? There still is slavery, and it's the Democrats that are enslaving people economically. You know,
Absolutely.
and these people are more slaves than they possibly were even back. Well, I can't say that, but they are slaves.
All these government programs.
That's right.
Government offers X, Y, and Z, free college education, free health care, et cetera, and then you become dependent on government.
And who could believe that, going down the socialistic path, who in their right mind could believe that everything can be free?
Who's going to pay for it?
Yeah, but you know what? People actually believe that. Well, talk to the people in Venezuela. Talk to the people in Cuba. What's happening in those places?
They're coming here.
Yeah, they are. They're trying anyway.
Yeah.
And yet you see...
Come legally if you respect our country.
And I think that you're going to see in this election, Cuban Americans are going to be really strong for Donald Trump because they know what he stands for.
Yep.
And you know, any of these people that have bought into the hate. That's the media has caused it. I mean, if you hear this over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, you know, and that's all you tune into, you're going to believe that stuff. But it is not true. It is not true. Donald Trump is a broken vessel like all of us, and God uses broken vessels. But I'll tell you, I like this broken vessel, and I think he is potentially destined to be the greatest president that we ever had.
He's a strong man with a lot of strong beliefs. He's a hard worker. He believes in this country and the American people, as I said.
And these people ought to be ashamed at how they treated him from the day one.
Before he was even elected.
Even before, yes. And I don't
disgusting.
I don't know how he stands it. He's got to be one of the strongest individuals that I've ever.
But this country.
Yeah.
The more successful that this country is, the more of a threat it is to the people, the globalists who want to have us be part of a one-world government, take away our constitutional rights and opportunities, make us part of the, you know, we need to get out of the United Nations. We got out of the Paris Accord. That's another great thing that the president did. The Democrats don't like it, but we need to get out of the United Nations because 80% of them vote against us as and what we stand for, and yet we're making a big donation. I just say get out of it. They're not United Nations.
Yeah.
I mean, think of all the things that are happening that we're talking about. All I can say is that the federal government, or government in general, I should say, the liberals in government, the socialists.
I would call them leftists.
Whatever you want to call
liberals,
them.
you know, I'm not so.
Whatever you want to call
them. They're okay. You know, I mean, there's some liberal thinking that is okay, I guess. You know, I mean, they're wrong.
But they want the people to be dependent.
Right.
Instead of independent and
Leftists,
successful.
Yeah. Right.
And that's not what this country was meant to be.
You know, and Linda, while Vermont is such a small state, you know, going back to the GWSA, you know, this climate change, I believe that there is climate change. I believe humans do affect climate to some degree, you know, but I just don't know how much. How do you ever know, you know? Golly, the volcanoes and all this stuff, you know, fires.
We're not causing those.
Yeah, no, but the one thing that is indisputable is that Vermont could stop driving every car and using every bit of fossil fuel. You turn off the faucet, it wouldn't even move the needle as far as you know, affecting the climate change.
But again, it's about control.
But what it would do, it would destroy a way of life and ability of people who live in a rural, healthy environment to live that way, to take their kids to school, to shop, to go to the doctors, and so forth. That's what, you know, they're going to destroy Vermont, and now we've passed it. And so what's going to happen is that, you know, they're going to set certain, you know, levels that we have to reach of CO2 emissions, right? And and if we don't, guess what? People can sue the state of Vermont, and we're going to have to pay their attorney's fees.
And why are 23 non-elected people going to sit on a council or a board or whatever and get well paid by the taxpayers Why?
Do you know this marijuana control board that's going to be established in January, that the governor has to appoint? He's going to get some, like 15 people or so. He's got to, I think they're going to select 7.
Are they going to get paid too?
Oh, paid. The chair, I think it's the pay of a Superior Court judge, which is $150,000, and the members on the board are going to get like $84,000 apiece. I mean,
look at all these committees and councils and everything that have been formed by the Democrats in our legislature.
I know. And they're
unaccountable directly to the people.
To the people.
And yet we're going to be paying their salaries to control us.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's just a sick approach to anything.
But, you know, and looking positively for the future, though, I can't fail to mention somebody, because there is somebody that I think is a bright light in Vermont.
Who's that?
And she's running for senator in Bennington. And her name is Meg Hansen.
Oh, she's brilliant.
She's brilliant. She's got the potential for being whatever she wants to be.
I agree.
And I think the people down there in Bennington, you ought to take a good hard look at her and start taking a good hard look at Dick Sears and Campion. Dick Sears needs to retire. And I just hope that Meg retires him.
Meg is smart.
She's running for Senate, by the way.
Yes,
down there.
she in Bennington County. She is well-spoken. She does her homework. She's just really, really knowledgeable.
And she's got a running mate down there, Michael Hall. He was the police chief in Manchester.
Oh, I had him on the show.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's running for Senate, too?
He's running
for the
as
House?
well, for Senate.
For the Senate? Oh,
Senate.
Great. What a great pair.
Yes, we need to get both of them in there.
Yes.
And in Randolph, we got two guys that are truly care about people. And I mean, I tell you, Jay Hooper, the only thing about Jay Hooper's really good at in my mind is to lockstep with the Democrat vote and put signs everywhere. I mean, we got sign pollution from Jay Hooper around town. But Joe Roshi and Charlie Russell, they're great guys. They're family-oriented guys. They're guys that care about people, and they're both running for the House of Representatives. And Bill Huff is running for Senate from my area, too.
Well, let's hope and pray they all get elected.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think so.
Well,
I hope so.
We're down to a little over 3 minutes.
Oh, you're kidding.
Oh, no, that's what everybody says.
But Linda,
how did that happen?
I had things to talk about.
Well, you're going to have to come back. But we need to decrease the size of our state government. We have $4.5 billion indebtedness, unpaid fund for teachers and municipal and state employees for their retirement.
$4.5 billion.
Healthcare. What did I say? Million?
No. Yeah.
Billion.
I wanted to
it's
reemphasize
billion.
that.
Yeah. And the people are going to have to make that up somehow. The Democrats who control our House and Senate here in Vermont have to stop the spending. They're creating all these committees, the additional outpouring of our money that non-elected people that we talked about.
And you know that our elected Republicans who want to keep doing the same thing and leaning left. And, look at where we are now. We have the lowest population of House members and Senate, and they want to keep doing the same thing and expect the same result. I've understood that to be defined as insanity. We need to get new people, fresh ideas, people interested in people and not in government.
We need to make sure
government.
that the people understand what's going on and why we need to elect more Republicans in the House and the Senate, statewide and federally, so that we can have some common sense.
Well, at least have a balance.
Yeah, that would be nice.
It's so imbalanced.
Yeah. Well, we have 1 minute and 49 seconds left. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing what you believe, as I do, and trying to wake up the people and to get them to understand what's happening, because you don't hear these things talked about everywhere, right?
No, you don't.
So you and I are a vessel for getting information out there. I want to thank you, and I'll have you back again. And anything you want to say before?
No, but I appreciate the opportunity, and just knowing you personally, because I think you're one of the neatest people I know.
Oh.
And I'm not just saying that.
Oh, well,
You're just cool. You're a cool lady.
Call me cool.
You're a cool lady.
Well, thank you. You're cool too, Bob. Folks, I know we got a little heated here tonight, probably more so than ever, but it's so critically important that we all understand who we're voting for and why, and what they stand for, and to realize that this state needs change. And we need a lot more balance, as Bob said, in our legislature. So please think really hard about who you're voting for when you're voting, okay? And with that, 18, 17, 16. I love doing this show. I can't remember now exactly how many years, 13, somewhere going on 14 maybe. Anyway, I have to say goodnight. See you again next week, folks, with another charming guest. Good night.